Learn how to use an IIFE to create private variables that cannot be accessed directly. An IIFE can hide variables inside it. Only what you return from it can be accessed outside. So let's move on and see how we can achieve this. So let's look at how IIFE can act as a module for private variables together. So inside the script tag, I have a couple of comments. So these are outlines of what we want to do. We have create an IIFE, declare a private variable value, return an object with method, store result in counter, call increment method to update value, call get method to read value. So let's start. The first thing is to create an IIFE. So how do we create that? Well, let's assign the results from our IIFE to a variable called counter. So now I can make the IIFE function and inside it, let me set a variable value to 0 and I want to return something. So what do I want to return? I want to return increment that is a method. I want its value to be increased by 1. I also want to add a get method which should return the value. Now, outside this, then I can just invoke the function. And you can see that on the screen, nothing is changing. Now, we just return an object here with method. The first method is the increment method, and the second method is the get method. So we have declared a private variable value, which is what we have here. Now, let's now store results in a counter, which is what we have done. So the result of our IIFE is stored in a counter. Now it's time to call increment method to update value. So how do you do that? Well, in order to access the method, I need the I need the variable name where the function itself is stored, and that is why I'm calling counter again. And inside counter is where I have the increments. Then I can call it. I say let x equals to the second function as well, the second method, which is get method. I can also call this one, assign it to variable x. Now I want to output get item element, get element by item. I want to get the value of what I have inside my get method, which has already been stored inside x. Now, if you take a look at it, you can see this. I have 1. So this is just a normal key tag that I had on my code. If I don't want it, I can just remove it. Most important thing is that you can see that immediately I call the method, then the function gets invoked automatically, and you can see the output on the screen. So what this example does is that it creates a counter, which is this, where the value is private. What we have inside here is private. So initially it was 0, but inside this method we now increment it by 1. That's the value of the plus, and that is why 1 is being returned. So it creates a counter where the value is private and can only be changed using provided method. So if you want to change the value, then it only can be changed using provided method that are stored inside the function. So this IIF runs immediately. Value is created inside of this function and not globally. Now, the function increment and get methods are both returned. Then the counter hold access to this function. Now, increment method updates value, which is what we just did here, yeah, which is what is here, and the get method returns value. So this updates why this return it. And then when we call both outside here, then we're able to access the value and display it. Now, things to note about this private variable is that IIFE creates private scope. Here in that everything that we have inside this function is private to this function alone. And variables inside it are hidden. Return object exposes control access. You can see that we were able to access it through the variable where we store the return object that is inside the function, which is the counter. And we're able to access all this method through the counter that hold access to the function. You can see counter.increment and then counter.get that you can see outside here. Then, so this makes the pattern to act like a module. So only what you need is what you get, only what you access is what you get and control. So here we use an IIFE to create a private variable called value. It cannot be accessed directly. Instead, we return functions that can change and read it, so the data is protected. If it is inside IIFE and not returned, you can't touch it. So what this is basically saying is that assuming we don't have anything, a way to access what is inside the function, there is no way we can touch it. So assuming we don't have this, so let me delete it and let's see what happens. Our value has gone. So there's always need to be a way to access those methods or what is inside a variable before you can use it. So what we have here is private and it's not accessible outside the IIFE, that is outside these functions. So here the value plus plus changes the private value and then this reads the private value, the get method. So this is how JavaScript handle private data before the availability of modern classes and modules that we now have in JavaScript. IIFEs can act like small modules, hiding data while exposing only what is needed. Remember that scope inside a function is locally scoped to that function. And that same pattern is what we can see in IIFE as well. Immediately invoked function expression. So key takeaways from this lesson. Number one, we cannot access value directly. You must use provided method. Without the provided method, you will not be able to access value. IIFE helps protect data. And an example that we have here is just a basic movie pattern before we have the modern classes and modules in JavaScript.